Ready to lead a significant tech summit, he arrived in a fitted suit. After examining him, however, hotel staff advised him to wait outside. The entire business was in shock at what transpired next. In downtown San Jose, Darius Whitfield pulled out of his black Lincoln Continental onto the hotel's circular driveway just before 8 a.m. The early light caught on the fitted fabric of his navy blue suit jacket as he adjusted the cuff. Crisp lines, neat tee, shoes made of Italian leather. His entire demeanor conveyed intention. Accurate, but the valet remained stationary. A step forward, but not even. Glancing over, Darius clutched his keys carelessly in one hand. Pretending to examine his phone, the young man averted his gaze before turning to face the car behind Darius. Without seeing Darius, the valet gestured beyond him and said, "Hey, can you park this one?" The hotel's glass doors caught Darius's attention. Not even a red carpet or large signs. It's just a calm foyer and spotless glass. There is no indication of what would transpire within those walls. After reclaiming his keys, he parked his own car and crossed the drive. He saw the concierge's smile change slightly as he opened the front door. As swiftly as it appeared, it disappeared. Without looking up, the woman at the front desk inquired, "Can I help you?" "Yes," Darius replied. "For the Summit Net conference, I'm in town. I think the Redwood Room is set aside for us." After rapidly scanning his face and scowling, the woman turned back to her tablet. Her question was, "Do you work for one of the vendors?" "Not at all. I am the CEO." Her eyes blinked. "All correct. Are you able to wait outdoors for a bit? We're still getting the area ready." He stopped. "I'm also the keynote speaker." An apology was not offered. Not a flash of insight. A narrow smile and a flat, "But still, we aren't nearly prepared. Please wait outside." Behind her, another employee emerged, a young man wearing a jacket and carrying a walkie-talkie fastened to his belt. As if looking for a badge, he glanced up and down at Darius. He said, "You with security?" in a low voice. "I'm Darius Whitfield," Darius replied evenly. "The conference you're hosting today, I run it." A beat of silence. Then the man tilted his head toward the door. "Just give us a few, sir. We'll call someone to come get you." Darius let out a breath through his nose, slow and measured. People were starting to arrive. A couple of early investors, one of them a white man in a gray plaid suit, was instantly greeted with handshakes and warm smiles. No one asked him to wait outside. Darius caught his eye, but the man barely registered him and went on through the lobby, escorted by the same staff who had just asked Darius to step outside. The hotel doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. Darius was now standing just outside the main entrance again, back on the pavement. He checked his watch. It was 8:09. His speech wasn't for another 51 minutes. He had time, but something was boiling inside him. And it wasn't anger. It was something colder. Across the street, a mother pushed a stroller toward a coffee shop. A bus wheezed to a stop at the corner. Life moved on. And yet Darius stood there, a grown man who had built a company from scratch, treated like he didn't belong because he didn't look like what they expected. The phone in his pocket buzzed. "Boss," came the voice of his assistant, Jalen. "Just checking. Did they greet you yet?" Darius stared at the hotel doors, his tone calm. "Not exactly. But that's when something shifted. Not in them, but in him." Jalen was still on the line, his voice low but alert. "What do you mean, not exactly?" "They asked me to wait outside," Darius replied. There was a pause. Not shock. Not disbelief. Just silence. Jalen had worked with Darius long enough to know that when he spoke like this, measured, without inflection, it meant he wasn't just reporting something. He was processing it, cataloging it. "Want me to come down?" Jalen asked. "No," Darius said. "Stay with the investors. They'll be arriving in the next 15. Let me handle this." He hung up, straightened his tie, and walked back through the doors. Inside, the same woman behind the counter saw him, but her expression didn't change. "I thought I asked you to wait outside, sir," she said, tapping something into the keyboard. "And I waited," Darius said plainly. "Now I'd like to speak with the event coordinator. My name is Darius Whitfield. I'm the founder and CEO of Whitfield Dynamic. We booked the Redwood Room, and 2 floors of your suites, for this conference." This time, she looked him in the eyes. But there was no apology there. Only a flicker of doubt, like she was trying to work out if this was a prank. "Mr. Whitmore, was it?" "Whitfield." A pause. She turned to the young man in the blazer. "Can you call Gina from events?" The man nodded and walked off. Meanwhile, a bellhop wheeled by with a luggage cart stacked with briefcases. Darius stepped aside and caught a glimpse of 2 of his board members stepping out of the elevator, each with branded Summit Net conference badges clipped to their suit. They greeted a hotel manager, who appeared to have materialized out of thin air to shake their hands. Darius raised a hand slightly to get his attention. The manager glanced at him, hesitated, then turned away. "Ma'am," Darius said calmly, turning back to the front desk, "I'm going to say this one more time. I'm not a guest. I'm not with security. I'm not delivering anything. I'm the reason these people are staying here. I organized this entire summit. I brought 60 of the most influential investors in West Coast tech into this building today." The woman opened her mouth, but before she could say a word, the man with the walkie-talkie returned. "She's on her way," he said. Then, after a pause, "You really the CEO?" Darius gave a small smile. "I didn't just build this company. I financed it. I wrote the first line of code. I signed the contract with this hotel. And I chose this location because I believed in the idea of professional courtesy." They both stared at him. He added, "I've got $5 billion under management, and I almost trusted you to help grow that." The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't disbelief. It was discomfort. The woman behind the desk shifted, suddenly unsure of what to say. Before she could try, Gina from events walked briskly into the lobby holding a folder, already talking. "Mr. Whitfield, I am so sorry for the delay. We weren't informed you'd arrived. Please come with me. We have the Redwood Room set and coffee being served. The investors are already gathering." The same staff who had asked him to step outside now stepped back like parting water. Darius followed Gina, past the desk, past the man with the walkie-talkie, and past the woman whose face was flushed now. Whether from embarrassment or something else, he couldn't tell. But he didn't speak again. He didn't need to. Because what they'd failed to see wasn't a man trying to sneak into a space where he didn't belong. What they missed, what they refused to see, was a man who owned the space, standing still, giving them a chance to correct themselves. They chose not to. But what came next wouldn't be a lesson in anger. It would be a lesson in memory. And Darius had an excellent one. The Redwood Room sat at the back of the hotel's conference wing, past a hallway lined with abstract artwork and muted carpeting. Inside, the lights were already dimmed for the opening presentation. Rows of chairs, a podium with the Summit Net logo, and a side table with bottled water and sleek name placard. Darius scanned the room quickly. Jalen was at the front, checking sound levels with the AV technician. Investors were filtering in, chatting in quiet tones over coffee. No one knew what had just happened in the lobby. He didn't go to the podium. Not yet. Instead, he stepped into a side room, the private lounge they'd reserved for speakers, and closed the door. Then he pulled out his phone. "Tammy," he said when his head of operations picked up. "We're moving the summit." There was no gasp on the other end. Tammy was used to this tone. "Today?" she asked. "Right now? How you want to relocate 50 people with less than an hour's notice? Not want. Need." She didn't push. "You want me to call the Fairmont? Or the Hay?" "Hey," he said. "I want every investor redirected there. Make sure they understand this isn't a scheduling issue. It's a matter of principle. I'll explain more when we're set. Also, cancel the rest of our booking here, suites included." Charge the penalty to me personally if they refuse to release. Tammy exhaled slowly. Understood. Call Jalen too. Let him know to delay the opening and start rerouting the guests. Then Darius ended the call. No shouting. No slamming phones. Just action. Clean and simple. He looked at his reflection in the lounge's dark glass window. He didn't feel righteous. He didn't feel vindicated. He just felt tired. Tired of walking into rooms that looked at him and saw everything but who he was. A soft knock came. It was Jalen. You want to run through slides? Darius shook his head. Change of plans. Jalen raised an eyebrow. Oh? We're leaving? I've already made the call. It took a second, but then Jalen nodded, catching on. They didn't even try to make it right, did they? Nope. Want me to tell the board? I'll speak to them myself. Just get the guests moving, and make sure no one thanks the hotel on their way out. Within minutes, Jalen was quietly passing the word through subtle handshakes and nods. Emergency relocation, he whispered to one group. We've got a better setup just a few blocks over, he told another. Mr. Whitfield will explain everything. Meanwhile, Tammy was on the line with the Hayes, locking down their backup venue, getting staff in place, transferring AV equipment and lunch catering. Darius returned to the Redwood room only once, to collect his notes and laptop. A hotel manager finally appeared, face tight, a folder clutched in his hand. Mr. Whitfield, I understand there was a mix-up at the front desk this morning, and I want to personally apologize. It was never our intention to offend you. You didn't offend me, Darius cut in calmly. You just disqualified yourselves. This isn't about ego, it's about standards. The manager blinked. Can we make this right? Darius zipped his laptop case and looked at him. You had your chance. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to, because the only thing louder than outrage is absence. And that room, minutes ago full of top-tier investors, was emptying fast. As Darius exited through the same lobby where he'd been told to wait outside, he saw the same desk clerk watching him, her lips pressed in a line. The young man with the walkie-talkie was gone. He didn't stop walking. A black SUV was waiting out front. The driver opened the door and Darius got in, his phone already ringing. But this wasn't the end of the day's story. It was just the part where other people started catching up. By the time the first tray of croissants made it to the now half-empty Redwood room, most of the guests were already blocks away, gathering in the grand atrium of the Hayes, San Jose's other luxury hotel. Unlike the first venue, staff there didn't need to be convinced of who Darius was. They welcomed him like they'd been preparing for this for weeks. Meanwhile, back at the original hotel, the front desk looked confused. The receptionist kept checking her screen, scrolling through the guest list, then the room blocks. Her brow furrowed as she picked up the phone. Gina, the conference guests. They're leaving. Gina, the events coordinator, was in the loading bay, helping the AV team pack up gear. What do you mean, leaving? I mean people are checking out. They're canceling their key. Some just walked out without saying anything. In less than 20 minutes, the lobby that had been filling with handshakes and business cards now had wide gap. Conference signage still stood, but the energy had drained like water through a cracked floor. Then the manager's phone rang. Sir, the company has canceled all bookings. The suite. The Redwood room. Catering. Everything. He blinked. That's not possible. It's summit day. But it was possible. And it had just happened. Calls started flooding in. The front desk clerk looked panicked now, trying to catch the manager's attention while balancing another call from housekeeping. This guest just left without notice, someone said. This client said they won't be paying for today's brunch. They said talk to Mr. Whitfield, another added. A security guard approached the manager. That SUV outside, it took him and a few others. They're gone. The shift was like watching dominoes fall. No screaming. No accusations. Just disappearance. At the Hayes, Darius stood in front of a large projection screen in a sunlit conference room. He spoke slowly, clearly, without a trace of bitterness. Before we begin, I want to thank you all for your flexibility. I know the change of venue was unexpected, but I believe where we gather says a lot about what we value. A murmur of agreement moved through the room. I chose that previous hotel for its reputation, its service, its proximity to your offices. But this morning, I was reminded that a polished lobby and a 5-star rating don't guarantee respect. He paused. I was asked to wait outside. Twice. By staff who never once asked my name. I parked my own car. I reintroduced myself. I explained who I was. But in that space, none of it mattered. A few jaws tightened. Heads shook. Some of you might be surprised by this. Others, less so. He let that sit for a beat. But I don't believe in yelling. I don't believe in dragging people down just to prove a point. I believe in moving forward. And today we're doing just that, somewhere that sees us, hears us, and treats our business with the seriousness it deserves. The crowd applauded, not out of pity but respect. In the back, Jalen watched, arms crossed, proud. Meanwhile, at the first hotel, the conference signage was being taken down. Maintenance staff wheeled away coffee urns no one had touched. A team from catering stood idle, glancing around, unsure if they should even begin plating the food. The manager stared at a paper in his hand. A formal notice from Whitfield Dynamics, terminating their agreement effective immediately. No lawsuit, no threats, just a clean severance, and a heavy cost. He called the general manager. We lost the event, he said. How? The guest we didn't recognize. He was the event. But while the hotel tried to clean up what they'd ignored, Darius was about to peel back a layer none of them expected: his own story. The day had settled into late afternoon. The sun cut long shadows across the street as Darius sat in the back seat of the SUV, his suit jacket folded neatly beside him. No tie now, just the open collar of a white shirt and a tired look in his eyes. Jalen sat next to him, scrolling through emails on his tablet. You sure you don't want me to write a public statement? Jalen asked. People are already starting to post. Someone from Marlowe and Banks took a video of you walking out. Darius shook his head. Let them talk. I'm not here to go viral. He leaned his head back against the seat. The engine hummed. Outside, kids rode bikes on the sidewalk, laughing loud. A woman in a red jacket helped an older man out of a rideshare and into a small dental office. Nothing extraordinary, just the day carrying on. But inside the car there was a wait. Can I ask you something? Jalen said, not looking up. Go ahead. Why didn't you just go off on them? I mean, they deserved it. After everything. Darius didn't answer at first. He just looked out the window. Then slowly, he said. When I was 19, I walked into my first interview with a resume full of summer jobs and a GPA that should have opened doors. The receptionist asked if I was delivering food. I smiled, said no, waited 2 hours. The interview never happened. They forgot I was there. Jalen glanced over, quiet. I could have made noise. Made a scene. But I didn't. I left. Found another. Another door. And another after that. He rubbed his hands together, as if remembering the cold grip of a steering wheel from years ago. Thing is, I spent the first part of my life thinking if I just achieved enough, people would stop making those assumptions, that degrees and money and suits would somehow speak louder. He looked over at Jalen. They don't. Jalen nodded slowly. But this wasn't just another receptionist. This was a whole hotel. A whole moment. Exactly, Darius said. That's why I left. Because I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't need them to understand. I needed the people watching to see what it looks like when you refuse to beg for respect you've already earned. He exhaled, looking out the window again. My father used to say, you can't force people to see you, but you can choose where you won't be invisible. Jalen leaned back in his seat, letting that settle. They stopped at a light. Across the intersection, a billboard flashed with an ad for a startup accelerator. Young faces, sleek logos, bold colors. Jalen smiled. You ever think we'd be the ones running those things instead of applying to them? Darius smirked. Every day. And still doesn't feel real sometimes. The SUV pulled to a stop in front of the Whitfield Dynamics building. Glass, steel, and quiet pride. As they got out, the receptionist in their lobby waved, already holding the elevator. As they rode up, Jalen broke the silence. You ever think about telling that story? The 19-year-old version? Maybe, Darius said. Not for sympathy, but for clarity. Because people think this stuff just happens now and then. One bad day. One rude employee. He paused. But it's never just about one moment. It's about patterns, repeated, sharpened, and buried. He stepped off the elevator, briefcase in hand. You can't fix what people won't name. But you can show them how to walk away from it with their dignity intact. But what Darius didn't realize was that this story, his quiet stand, was already moving beyond him. The fallout started quietly. Not with headlines. Not with outrage. Just a few whispers, passed in the corners of conference rooms. Then a handful of emails. By midweek, 3 other companies had quietly canceled their bookings with the same hotel. No statements. No protests. Just a simple message. We've decided to move in a different direction. But inside those boardrooms, the conversation wasn't vague. You hear what happened with Whitfield's team? Yeah. We don't need that kind of risk tied to our name. What's the backup venue again? The hotel tried to patch the damage. A regional sales director reached out to Whitfield Dynamics, offering complimentary bookings for the next quarter, free suites for executives, even spa credits for visiting investors. The offer didn't make it past Tammy. She read it, closed the email, and marked it as handled. Darius never replied. Because when trust breaks like that, it's not something you repair with discount. It's not a billing issue. It's about what you allowed to happen on your watch. Meanwhile, word of the relocation spread to media circles. A small tech outlet published a story. Not a takedown, just a timeline. What happened, who saw it, the shift in venue, the polite but deliberate silence that followed. But that story made its way into inboxes, then into text threads, and eventually into conversations at happy hours, where young black professionals raised their glasses to Darius Whitfield. Not because he had clapped back, but because he hadn't needed to. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't slamming the door, it's walking away from the room like it never deserved you in the first place. Back at the Whitfield Dynamics office, the boardroom was quiet. Darius sat at the head of the table, flanked by 4 of his senior staff and 3 partners from a private equity group out of Seattle. An investor cleared his throat. We heard about the switch. People are still talking about it. Darius leaned back slightly. Is that a problem for you? Not at all, the man said. In fact, it told us more about your leadership than the slide deck ever could. Another investor nodded. It's rare to see someone with that kind of control under pressure. That's where trust comes from. Darius gave a small nod but didn't gloat. This wasn't about winning. It was about never playing by a rigged rulebook to begin with. Later that evening, he walked the quiet floor of the office, stopping to glance at a whiteboard filled with scribbled diagrams, sticky notes, and equations. Jalen was there too, sipping something from a chipped mug. You see the write-up? He asked. I did. They left out the part where the valet ignored you. They always leave something out, Darius said. Doesn't matter. Jalen added, people know what it was. The ones who need to know, they got the message. Darius looked over the whiteboard again. You know, when we built this place, I didn't want it to be flashy. I didn't want people to walk in and feel impressed. I wanted them to feel seen. That's the difference. Jalen nodded. They see you now. No, Darius said quietly. They always saw me. They just never expected me to be the one signing the checks. He turned toward his office, flicked off the lights, and paused at the doorway. Let's keep building, he said. But before he left for the night, there was one more person Darius needed to talk to, someone who reminded him why moments like this matter. The next morning, Darius stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, a fresh mug of black coffee in hand. The sky was a flat silver, the kind that made everything outside feel quiet and far away. There was a soft knock at the door. "Come in," he said, not turning around. The door opened and a young man stepped in, Elijah Green. Mid-20s, sharp, but still green around the edges. One of Whitfield Dynamics' junior analysts. He held a folder in his hand but looked unsure if now was the right time. "You said you wanted to meet?" Elijah asked. Darius turned, gave a small nod, and gestured to the chair across from him. Elijah sat, setting the folder on his lap, but not opening it. His eyes flicked to the side like he wasn't sure how to begin. I heard what happened at the hotel," he finally said. "Some of us were talking about it in the lunchroom yesterday." Darius didn't say anything right away. He just let the silence hold, not uncomfortable, just steady. "I guess I just wanted to ask, how do you not let it get to you?" Elijah said. "How do you stay calm when it's that obvious?" Darius smiled slightly. "You think I stayed calm?" Elijah paused. "Didn't you?" "No," Darius said. "I just didn't let them see it." He set his coffee down. "You know what they saw when I walked into that hotel? A man standing where they didn't think he should be. Nothing else mattered. Not the work, not the contracts, not the conference, just their own picture of what power looks like and who doesn't fit it." Elijah leaned forward. "So why not confront them? Why not tear into them and let the world see?" "Because the world already sees." "That's not the problem," Darius said. "The real fight isn't about proving anything to them. It's about teaching the people who come after us that you don't need their approval to make move. You don't need permission to belong." Elijah nodded slowly. "You handled it with class," he said. "If it were me, I don't know." "That's the thing," Darius said. "You don't have to know. You just have to remember this. Never trade your composure for someone else's ignorance. If they misjudge you, let them. But make sure that the space you're building, for yourself, your company, your name, your team, never makes anyone else feel like they don't belong there." Elijah sat back, the words landing heavier than he expected. "That's what it means to lead," Darius said. "You don't yell at the wall. You build a door somewhere else." They sat in silence for a few seconds. Then Darius leaned forward. "Now," he said, tapping the folder Elijah brought. "What's in here?" "Oh, right," Elijah said, starting to get back into work mode. "New proposal from the behavioral data team. We made some changes based on your notes last week." Darius flipped it open and scanned the first page. "Good. Let's meet with the team this afternoon." Elijah stood to leave but stopped at the door. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For showing us how to move without ever lowering yourself." Darius gave a quiet nod and Elijah left the room. Outside, traffic moved steadily, like the world hadn't noticed any of it. But the people who had noticed, they wouldn't forget. Because this wasn't just about one man and one hotel. It was about all the rooms people walk into, where someone looks up and sees only half the story. It was about the quiet ways power can speak through action, not reaction. And it was about rewriting the rules without ever picking up the pen they tried to hand you. If this story hit you somewhere real, if it made you think about how you carry yourself in spaces that weren't built for you, share it. Talk about it. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that show just how powerful quiet strength can be.